Dawn breaks over Mount Shirayama. The mist clings to the slopes like a shroud, and beneath it, 300 men gather in silence. Their armor cracked, covered in dust. Their blades dulled but still drawn. Their banners are tattered and their eyes hollow with exhaustion. And yet, they don't retreat. They kneel in the dirt, murmuring quiet prayers to their ancestors, while above them, the Imperial Army awaits. 30,000 soldiers with rifles, cannons, and orders to wipe them from the face of the earth. Saigō Takamori stands at the center, his armor stitched with crimson thread and his katana resting in calloused hands. He says nothing. He doesn't need to. His presence alone steadies his men. A bugle sounds in the valley below, and the modern army begins its advance. And with that, the last true samurai rise for one final charge into history. Long before the fall of Shirayama, before rebellion and betrayal, there was a boy named Saigō, born in the Satsuma domain of southern Japan. He was not born into privilege, but he was born into duty. His father was a low-ranking samurai, honorable, stern, but poor. Young Saigō trained in the way of the sword, but his true strength was in his spirit. He studied Confucian texts by candlelight and whispered verses of loyalty and virtue as he honed his strikes beneath the cherry blossoms. Bushido, the way of the warrior, was not just a code for Saigō, it was the very air he breathed. Those who knew him remembered his simplicity, his honesty, and his silence. Even as a boy, Saigō was someone others followed. As he grew, so did his reputation. In a time where foreign ships hovered off Japan's coasts and the Tokugawa shogunate tightened its grip, Saigō emerged as a pillar of resolve. He became a trusted advisor to the Satsuma daimyo, Shimatsu Narakira, a lord with vision and a man who saw that Japan could not remain closed forever. Within candlelit chambers, beneath the shadows of sliding paper doors, Saigō spoke plainly and without ambition. He believed in a future where Japan could stand proud without losing its soul. But in a land gripped by suspicion, loyalty came at a price. When Narakira died suddenly, Saigō's position crumbled. Rivals in court feared his influence and sent him away, first to Edo and then to the desolate island of Amami Oshima. There, the once promising samurai became a farmer and a teacher. He wore threadbare robes and lived among peasants, guiding children with stories of virtue and justice. But inside, a storm brewed. He wrote of sorrow and of honor. Better to die for righteousness, he penned, than to live in shame. For years, he walked the beaches alone, salt in his beard, waves at his feet, waiting to be remembered or forgotten. And then the call came. In 1863, Satsuma summoned him home. The nation teetered on the brink of collapse. The Tokugawa shogunate was weak, the people were restless, and the foreign powers knocked louder at the gates. Saigō didn't hesitate. He helped forge an alliance between rival domains, the Satsuma and Choshu. Once enemies, they were now united by purpose, and together they led the imperial forces in what became known as the Boshin War, toppling the shogunate and restoring power to the young Emperor Meiji. In 1868, the emperor returned to Kyoto, and the modern nation of Japan was born. Saigō Takamori stood at the center of it all, praised as a hero, as a patriot, and as a man who had changed history. But victory came with a cost. In the years that followed, Japan changed too quickly. In its rush to modernize, it shed its traditions like a snake molts its skin. The samurai class was all but abolished. The sword banned. Western suits replaced hakama, and train tracks split the countryside. Saigō watched on as his world vanished piece by piece. He wore his traditional robes still, walking the new streets of Tokyo like a ghost from another time. Students mocked the old ways, and politicians traded honor for profit. This was not the Japan he fought for. This was something else. In 1873, Saigō walked away from the government. He returned to Kagoshima, deep in the Satsuma heartland. There, in the shadow of Sakurajima volcano, he built schools, not for arithmetic or science, but for discipline, virtue, and for the soul of the samurai. He trained young men in swordsmanship and philosophy, urging them to serve the emperor, but never blindly. He didn't seek rebellion, but rebellion surely found him. By 1876, the Meiji government grew nervous. Saigō's influence in Satsuma was vast. His students were disciplined, loyal, and armed. The central government struck first, seizing weapons, assassinating leaders, and sending spies out into the hills. In response, the people of Satsuma rose up. They begged Saigō to lead them, not because he lusted for war, but because they trusted no one else. Government had forgotten honor. They had forgotten Bushido. And so, Saigō Takamori, now in his 50s, donned his armor one last time. In early 1877, the Satsuma Rebellion erupted. Saigō led an army of thousands, former samurai, farmers, students, all against the imperial government he had once helped empower. They moved north, engaging in skirmishes along the way, armed with swords and old rifles, facing modern weapons and mass conscription. The old Japan now clashed with the new Japan. Villages burned, blades met bullets, and honor met progress. And though they fought with unmatched courage, the rebels were pushed back step by step until they reached Kumamoto Castle. For weeks, Saigō's forces surrounded the garrison at Kumamoto, but the walls would not fall. The imperial army regrouped, reinforced, and struck back. Cannons roared across the fields. Food dwindled. Ammunition vanished. And disease crept in with the rain. And yet Saigō would not surrender. He knew the cost. He knew how this would end. But he also knew there was meaning in defiance, so long as it was just. As one general warned, if Saigō dies, the soul of Japan might just die with him. On September 24, 1877, Saigō's final 300 samurai gathered atop Shirayama. Below them, an imperial force of 30,000 encircled the mountain. Their rifles were loaded, their cannons were aimed. All night, shells screamed overhead, and by morning, trees were shattered and soil was turned to ash. Saigō dressed with care. His armor gleamed faintly in the morning light, and his sword, now chipped, hung at his hip. He was limping, having been wounded days earlier, but he did not waver. And as the enemy advanced, the final order was given. The samurai charged. Through smoke and gunfire, they ran, not to victory, but to remembrance. One by one, they fell. And at the mountain's crest, Saigō Takamori knelt. His face was serene, and his blade was drawn. It is said he performed the ancient samurai tradition of seppuku before enemy soldiers could reach him, choosing death by his own hand as a warrior rather than death at enemy hands as a criminal. The Satsuma Rebellion was in the end crushed. Japan marched into the modern age, railways spread, industries boomed, and the emperor ruled unchallenged. But Saigō didn't vanish. In death, he became even more powerful than in life, a symbol of loyalty, courage, and resistance to soulless change. In 1889, 12 years after his death, Emperor Meiji issued a full pardon. A bronze statue of Saigō now stands in Ueno Park in Tokyo. He's dressed in his robes, with his sword at his side, gazing off into the distance. Some say he looks sad, but others say he's watching, waiting for the soul of Japan to remember itself. Saigō Takamori was many things: a samurai, a soldier, a rebel, a patriot. He fought to build a nation and then died fighting to save its spirit. In his final charge, he did not seek victory. He only sought meaning. And in doing so, he became something greater than just a general. He became the last of the samurai. For more epic tales from the War Stories archive, hit that subscribe button to enlist today. Then, pick one of the stories on screen to select your next mission. Over and out, soldier.